What do you do with a person when you meet them? What's your obligation? What's the fun of what to do with a person when you meet them? That's what this is about. Uh, that's really evolved for me tremendously. First of all, from Wellesley, I got into girls' culture and how it's different than guys' culture, and it showed me a lot of weakness in MIT culture that came from its maleness, a lot of weakness in me that came from maleness. Then I wrote a book called Superselling, which is 33 cases of enormously successful sales in my career that mostly came from cultural differences and using cultural differences, differences of the culture of the genders, of the cultures of nations, of the cultures of devices and technologies, various kinds of culture. Now, what do you do with a person? You know, we're all going to, our lives are terribly short. We're all going to disappear and go back to where we came from. And in this very short show time that we have together, it's really a trick. Time is a trick. There really isn't any time, but you feel like days are long. That's a trick. That's an illusion. You have to be careful about that. Not only that, all this fighting to look important among each other. There is no importance a human can achieve. The greatest men in history are largely mass killers. Napoleon, Alexander the Great, people like that. So unless you're willing to kill 5 or 6 million people, you're not going to be a great man in history. And therefore, uh, and what's the point of human history? We don't even know if our race is going to survive the end of our sun, for example. Um, so uh, thinking you have a lot of time and then spending the little time you have fighting with everybody to try to look more important than them, i.e., the male monkey dynamics that create Harvard University. That's sick, stupid, delusional stuff, idiocy. And most of us are smart enough not to get involved in that crap, and not smart enough, therefore, to envy the psychopaths who end up lusting after that crap. People who are so short, men in particular, chairmen of companies that are so short that they've resented it all their life, and their way of getting even is making billions of dollars. We all know people like that. There are lots of them around. My favorite example was Ross Perot and Robert Reich. Both of them were extremely short men at the Harvard Club in Manhattan to an audience of 1,000. And Ross had a special platform and a special podium to make himself look big because he's weak and afraid and a coward. And then Robert Reich stood behind an ordinary podium without a platform and wiggles his arm on the side, which is all you could see because he was so short you couldn't see his head at all, and said, "I can talk to you like this." And then he leaped to the side and he said, "All right, and you can see all of me like this." And he was a guy comfortable with being short, and wasn't defensive about it, trying to compensate for it by looking important. So here you had this Texan who thinks of himself as a he-man, who's actually a coward and still bitter that he's short. And here you have this Robert Reich guy, liberal, etc., with confidence and not afraid of the fact that God made him short. The one guy accepted the limitations in his life and used them to good effect, and the other guy spent his whole life bitter and fighting against his limitations, pretending they weren't there, and trying to look important to compensate for them. So, what do you do with people you meet? Well, gradually, I've learned that to identify all the cultures they have that I don't have, and to see the limits, therefore, of what I can ask from them. And don't ask them to leave to be an educated person who leaves behind all his initial factory settings if they don't have the guts, don't have the courage, don't have the oomph to ever be an educated person. They want to stay a local bigot, trapped by how they were born and who raised them. Then don't sit there and wreck their life by trying to make them tortured and miserable and unsatisfied with that. Now, if they are frustrated by that and have problems because of that, then tell them there's a door, and tell them that millions of people want to escape their initial factory settings like they do. And it can be done. It takes 30 years, and you have to work on all these habits you've incorporated that you don't like the results of. But at the age of 55, if you start at 20 or 30, at the age of 55 or 60, you can end up being 90% routines you have consciously chosen and practiced, replacing all the little crummy routines from your parents and your teachers and your nation and your gender. Then the other thing is touching every life you're around. You want the encounter to be extreme and strong enough that the best part of them challenges the best part of you, and the best part of you challenges the best part of them. And so you want to find their best, strongest part and let it challenge you. And you want to find your own best part and let it challenge them. You don't want to hurt them with it, but you do want to challenge, shake up assumptions, and raise the question of growth, but not decide it for them because they're a separate human being and they have a right to decide growth on their own. But you want to raise the question for them. And then third, you want to make the encounter multidimensional. Audio, music, video, oral, written, past, present, future. You want to keep the encounter as many going on encountering them in as many dimensions of media as possible at the time. And during your time together, keep shifting media to develop them in this medium and develop them in that. And you'll find amazingly that they're so wimpy and unsatisfying and cowardly in one medium, and they're so strong and courageous in another medium. They're so stupid in one medium. They're so brilliant in another medium. And if you didn't check out all those mediums, you'd have the totally wrong impression about them. Then I think you have to look at the bigger question, which is playing to different audiences. What is the them that plays to people not yet born, who will be born 200 years from now? What is the them that plays to people that will be born the day they die? What is the them that plays to people who are their peers in life, like them? And then what is the them that plays to the rising generations underneath and younger than them, the barbaric youth coming up? They're going to have different thems and different capabilities and identities based on those four audiences. And again, that's something you want to go through in an encounter to make sure because it can look very, very different on the them that plays to one of those audiences than the other, and you can end up with a totally wrong impression if you leave out checking all four of those audiences. Anyway, that's a beginning as to what I call encountering people, and what I require of myself, and then what I teach of my students in order to make an encounter. Now, CEOs do it by remembering your name and giving you a good handshake and making eye contact, and then forgetting the hell about you for the next 5,000 years. So I'm trying to communicate something a little bit less dumb than CEO behavior. And then you watch the CEO eyes, like I've done 100 times, and they're looking for the best member of the opposite sex in the room, and within 5 minutes they'll hone over to the shortest skirt, which apparently is their primary. I mean, you get up to the top and you stop being polite, making excuses, and you just become sheer monkey. And it's kind of fun to watch a person lose all humanity and civilization that way. How money turns them into a barbarian, and the humiliations that's going to put them through in the rest of life, not to mention the diseases they'll get.